We can start. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna from GreenGeeks, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Designing for the User First, UX Core Principle for WordPress, with our guest speaker, Joe Simpson LLC. So we're so glad to have you here again, Joe. And real quick, I want to say a couple of things about GreenGeeks for those of you who are watching us maybe from the recording and are not familiar with us. We're a 300% green energy web hosting provider, which essentially means we put back 3 times the energy you consume into the grid in the form of renewable energy. And we have been recognized by the US EPA since 2009 as a Green Power Partner. We offer share hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, and dedicated server. We also plant a tree for every hosting account that we provision, and we recently reached 50,000 trees planted through our partnership with a global reforestation nonprofit called One Tree Planted. So now moving on to our webinar, a few housekeeping items. If you have any question that you come up with during the presentation, please put it in the Q&A and Joe will be answering them at the end of his presentation. You can always chat in the chat room, but remember to select everyone if you want everyone to see what you're discussing. And as always, we're recording this presentation, so if you need to step away or leave for another meeting, do not worry because we're going to send a recording to you in the next couple of days. And finally, we have enabled live transcription for the webinar, so you have the ability to enable them by clicking on the show captions icon. So I'm going to introduce real quick from the GreenGeeks team today here, Erica Barbosa, who will be assisting us with the chat and the Q&A. So welcome, Erica. Do you want to introduce yourself and say hi?
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. I am Erika Barbosa. I am from Costa Rica. Today, I'm going to be assisting the chat and hope you enjoy today with Joe. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Erica. I'm going to say a little bit about Joe. Joe is a front-end web developer and user experience designer, specializes in accessible enterprise-level WordPress solutions. When a hard event forced him to take a leave of absence, he attended his first meetup, beginning an incredible 8-year journey that included giving back to the WordPress community in roles ranging from volunteer, speaker, team rep, contributor day table lead, community summit moderator, WordCamp lead organizer at both the local and the flagship levels. He started 3 WordPress meetups, including 2 in Santa Clarita, California, and Black Press with 2 automatations. And after 3 decades as a public servant at Metro Los Angeles Transit, managing their blog network, he retired recently to present topics on WordPress open source in tech in emerging and unrepresented community under the world, speaking in Taiwan, Costa Rica, and more. So now that we shared something about you, Joe, would you like to say hi and then start your presentation?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy that so many people showed up for this topic. I love doing this, and I love being with you, Anna and Erica. So I'm ready to get started.
Yes, absolutely.
We were everywhere. It was like being the Chicago Bulls with Michael Jordan, but in a design space. Although I was no longer in the design department and our new team on the website had won a Webby Award, this was different. With a new creative director and lead designer, the design studio communications team was a toast of the agency, racking up awards left and right, even appearing in the preeminent design annuals. But although we were featured, we were a tiny thumbnail in those features. And not to hate on the team, we were left behind. The sway and influence of being an award-winning team meant that all the learning that I had done in usability and accessibility wasn't important to our government agency. Even when we were deemed for being inaccessible, our managers were more interested in looking good. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started here. Okay. Okay, let me know if you can see the screen.
Yep.
These are images from our design studio. As I mentioned, we were very, very prominent in the transportation community. We were winning awards left and right. Metro is the third largest transit agency in the country, and we were doing a lot of great things. They had a very distinct brand and a very distinct corporate identity. But again, it wasn't translating to the web. And more importantly, our site wasn't really user-friendly. Before the design studio, a lot of times we had to make decisions or make changes to our website based on what the mayor said, because Metro Los Angeles is run by city officials as well as our internal staff. So depending on what assistant to the mayor had to say, our site could change in an instant. I want to start with this quote because it sort of sums up what I'm going to talk about today and what I hope you take away from it. As a designer or a developer or someone in between, it's very important that we take stake in what we do, make it very important in terms of the work that we do. It's important to our customers, to people that are going to use our projects. So I want to make beautiful things even if no one cares. That was said by a famous designer, Saul Bass, and it sort of sums up how I felt about a lot of the work that I did at Metro. But today, I want to talk to you about these following things. It was in the description for the webinar. We're going to briefly talk about the history of full site editing, because in the last 8 years, a lot has changed. A lot of us have done some different things in the WordPress community in terms of using page builders, etc. But since I've retired in January, I've revisited the full site editor, and I'm really trying to make an effort to relearn the tool, to really focus on design, learn more about usability, accessibility, and implement that in the work that I do. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about why you should always ask what your project's primary task is and how you can avoid some common mistakes that make you forget about those things. We're going to conduct it's a really rough site review and a UX test live. So I really want your input in the chat or in general. Follow along with me. I'll share the link so that we can look at this together. We're going to determine some key call to actions and pathways through the site. And we're going to look at the style book and some things in full site editing, how to choose a theme, plugins, some basic rules. Again, a lot of this and a lot of what I do in the WordPress community, I try to usher people into the project in the topics, although they may seem simple, they can provide a foundation for what you need to do in terms of design. And then also I'll share some resources later on and take your questions. Designing for the user first, UX core principles for WordPress. Again, I'm not going to go into it much further, but I was introduced before. So again, reach out to me. I'll share some contact information later, and I would love to hear about what you're working on, and we can interact moving forward. But I'm going to get into user experience a little bit. What is user experience? User experience is how a user interacts with and experiences a product, system, or service. It includes a person's perceptions of the utility, ease of use, and efficiency. A lot of times we don't think about that. A lot of times when we learned how to make websites, it's more important to get things going, build something quickly, or meet a deadline, instead of really focusing on who's going to use it, what our customer needs, more than our client. A lot of times we'll get directions from a client. They want something and they want it exactly this way. But it's really important as a designer or a developer to really hold your ground. And I'm going to provide a few tools to show you how you can sort of fight that and try to get your point across in a more effective way that's quantifiable. What is user experience? Again, back in the 90s, Apple hired a gentleman named Don Norman, and he's become famous as part of the Nielsen Norman Group, and he was credited with creating the term user experience. And when I shared my story earlier, that happened 15 years ago or so. And I was into UX, which now seems very popular and commonplace. Back then, when he talked about how a site really had to make sense, and a lot of the books that I read, I really focused on, or I tried to focus on, thinking about the customer first. But UX has been around, even though it wasn't called UX, much longer than that. I'm from Highland Park, the home of the Model T, and Henry Ford investigated how workers interacted with their tools and on the assembly line to make it more efficient during each phase of the auto production process. Also, even further back in China, feng shui, we've all heard about that term. It stresses arranging objects in the space in such a way to be pleasing, harmonious, and creates a flow. So these concepts and thoughts have been around for a while, but again, how many of us have incorporated it into our process? Okay, these are sort of my revised versions of a lot of the principles that I've read out there. And again, these are going to sound basic, but really, if you focus on these as a foundation, and it's not set in stone, but again, if it's your foundation, you can only build something better moving forward. So always keep users first. Again, a lot of times I'll receive, or a story I like to share is our projects team, Metro, is in a funny position now that I've left the company. In general, way back in the 50s and 60s, when the automobile came around, California had a great idea. They said, you know what, let's tear out all of our train systems, our rail systems, and we'll put in freeways. And we all know what happened if we live in California and we're sitting in our car most of the time. So our projects teams are putting projects back into the system. And unfortunately, they're only 1% of our traffic on site. People want to know a little bit of information about what's going on, but they're more interested in planning a trip. We generally get up to 1 million itineraries a day, people planning their trip going from here to there, working. But a lot of the pressure that we get internally is to put project information in prominent places. So again, my battle was always to try to get that information up and in front of our customers on how to plan their trip and try to put the other stuff in the background. So my second user experience tip is to design for all users. Again, if we think about the sites and projects that we create, imagine cutting out 20% of your possible traffic. There's some estimates in the accessibility community that that number of people are prevented from seeing your site. That's like 20 cents on every dollar. Why would we want to build something that's not easy to use by everyone? And again, a lot of times the developers I worked with or designers I worked with, they're more in love with what they built or the appearance of something instead of how it actually is going to be ingested or interacted with by our customers. Optimize for all devices. I'm going to show you this website by a physician. I'm sort of a weekend warrior, and actually right now I have a sore back, and that's why I'm standing. But if you look at his site is still not responsive, and it's 2025. Responsive sites have been around for quite a while. So optimize for all your devices, because now a lot of folks are looking at your website on a phone, on a tablet, in places that you may not expect. So again, this is a foundation for all the work that you do. And WordPress is a great way to do it because a lot of sites that meet the current theme standards are already out of the box responsive. This one's very important from a technical standpoint. Your site needs to load fast. Don't make your visitors wait. Visitors can bounce off of your site in as little as 3 seconds if they don't see what they want quickly and fast. And as quickly everything loads and you get your call to action ingested quickly. No playing games or guessing games with your client. Our visitors come to your site, and if they have to figure out where your menu is, if your menu's in a different form, if it's hidden, or you have to roll over something, or they have to wait on animation or video to load, they're gone. Communicate with legible, clear typography. Being able to get the information across, again, visual, a lot of folks focus on visual. How many of us our clients have demanded a large image on our homepage or a slider full of images that, people don't even get to the second or third message in the carousel before they're gone. So again, communicate clearly. Some of the most successful sites have a lot of text. If someone has a disability or accessibility issue and they're coming to your site, the text is what they'll hear. So again, communicate clearly. One of the cool things about our design team, our award-winning design team, is that the communications director, the creative director, he was a great writer. And so he came up with all these cool sayings and jingles. But again, to the average customer that wants to go to Wilshire in Beverly Hills, They just want to get on the 20 bus and ride. They don't care about a cool saying. So again, communicate to your audience in a clear fashion that'll make them interact and engage. Number 7, follow conventions and standards. One of the things, or one of the reasons why I got back into full site editing Gutenberg is that a lot of us went into page builders back in 2018 or 2017 when it was announced. Page builders that come on the scene, and they made it really easy to drag and drop and build in a fashion that, as a former graphic designer, it was very familiar to me. But that's like, imagine forgetting 8 years of development. 8 years ago, our phones were much different. How we ordered food or clothes was much different. So again, if you forget about current technology and things that are happening right now and stick to your old processes, that can also impact what your user can access. Provide avenues for visitor feedback, test, and constantly analyze data. This one is the biggest one for me because I feel like most people forget about this one or they don't do it at all. This is a nicety. This is extra work. These are extra tools. But a lot of what I do in the community, for example, a story I like to share is when I was with WordCamp US as one of the lead organizers. I was doing this, leading a social media team, and I tried to give them engagement or interaction data on all of the social media that we were putting out, but nobody really cared. But I was looking at it as, are we selling enough tickets? Are people interested in information about the city? Are people interested in the schedule? So again, you can customize your messaging based on the data. So again, I look at the website in the same way. I'm going to share a few tools that I've used in the past to do some of that. And again, make sure you put something on the site that people can, like an input form or contact us. Make sure that you're taking a look at that information as well. A funny thing again about Metro is that with our projects, for example, when we built to the Expo line of Santa Monica, they'll create a new email, but nobody will really monitor it because our customer service group is a different group than projects and they don't communicate. So again, make sure that the avenues that you put on your site for client feedback are being monitored and responded to. Because again, they could tell you about a bug on the site. They could tell you if something's missing, a typo. So again, you need to, the web is great because we interact with people instantaneously. So engaging with them in an active way is great. Don't just create a site and leave it, expect people to come. You really have to be engaged with your audience and your clients. Empower visitors with controls for desired interaction. So for example, on a home page, I mentioned a slider before. If you have a video on the page, don't play the video automatically if there's sound. Allow the user the controls to turn it on when they want or stop the slider. I've seen so many examples of these two of a video or a slider where it just auto plays without any controls. So again, this will make it more engaging and give the client more power or visitor more power. Make your key actions easy to reach. How many times have you come to a website and the call to action is below the fold, or you have to search for it, or there's no different, the entire page looks similar and there's no way to figure out what's a link, what's a button, what's important, what's not. So again, make sure your key actions are easy to reach. In terms of WordPress, as I mentioned, back in 2018, I was at WordCamp US, sitting outside the lecture hall, waiting on Matt to do his State of the Word, which is sort of, for those not familiar in the WordPress space, it's sort of like the State of the Union. It gives a sort of overview of what WordPress has done in the previous year and what's expected in the upcoming year. And I sat beside someone named Ben Rittner, who was telling me about this new product that he was launching called Cadence Blocks. And he told me about what Matt was going to say and how it was going to change WordPress forever. That was a very controversial decision. A lot of folks at that time said, hey, I'm going to do something in a different direction because they didn't want to wait as the product matured, as Gutenberg went through its phases. So a lot of us left. So again, I came back for that reason to figure out if this tool is viable at this point as a near their fourth phase. And hopefully it's something. Hopefully today I'm going to build in full site editor so you could see some of the later tools and see what's going on as well. These are the 4 phases in the WordPress word map. They're on phase 3. Again, it was easier editing. They tried to create a process. How many of us remember the classic editor, where it was sort of like a Microsoft menu with the kitchen sink above your editor box? And back in the day, I shared a story at WordCamp Canada last week about our website that had a theme that deprecated, because again, being in a government agency, there was so much conflict and turmoil and turnover that each time we were preparing to do a redesign, our communications director would leave or our CEO would change and the project would stop. And we were forced to change the site when our theme deprecated. It got so old and there were so many conflicts between the plugins that were coming out currently and that old theme that we had to rebuild. So at that time, we were able to update to full site editing. But again, these are the 4 phases: customization, the site editor came online, and now they're working on collaboration in the 3rd phase. And then again, the 4th phase will be multilingual. This is one of the tools that I mentioned earlier. At Metro, we used Hotjar to sort of track visitor interactions. And if this looks familiar, it reminds me of like a satellite image, when you watch the weather on your local TV station, the clouds as they move through, they have to color it to show you the intensity of a storm. So the brighter, the more red something is, it means that that's a more dangerous storm. So Hotjar is cool because it'll track all the traffic on pages that you designate. So we always took a look at our new content, but also our homepage. And again, as the color is more intense, that shows you where people are clicking on the page. This isn't a replacement for what I think is the best way to interact in terms of user testing. Having somebody in front of you and being able to watch them, and you could do this remotely, but it's even better if you see them in person. And I've done this in the past at Metro. This is a great way to see how people are interacting with your site. It also has a feature where you can actually record all the pass through your site, and that is a great tool. For example, one of the things that I left behind that I was so happy to leave behind was there was a project that was coming online the last year I was there by our projects team. And unfortunately, again, our design studio had more influence, so they didn't really understand that PDFs weren't accessible or a great way to go about things. And like I said, we were sued for accessibility because our PDFs weren't accessible at that time. But one of our top project people, they wanted to do a revamp of our project site. And they decided to build sort of a PDF repository and replace HTML pages. So we took this information and showed them, hey, no one really reads your information, and the project pages get 1% of the traffic. Please, let's not waste this money. So again, this is a good way that you can go back to your client and say, hey, this isn't a good idea. You can even put up a page, track it, go back a couple weeks and say, hey, no one's looking at this information. This information is not effective. So it's a good tool in your arsenal. This is a video I grabbed from their site showing Hotjar. And again, you could pop up surveys on certain pages. You can do a lot of testing and get a lot of reporting, and you could do recordings as well. So it's a good tool, but there is one tweak. They haven't updated the plugin in a while, so I need to investigate what new tools are out there that does something similar. All right, let's jump out and we're going to do a quick demo and then we're going to do a build. Anna, should I hold? And I think you mentioned we're going to hold the questions until the end, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's quickly jump out here. And I'm going to do a couple of things first. I'm going to show you a couple of quick tests that you can add to your arsenal that are free. Part of what I enjoy doing with our community is teaching people how to use WordPress in a free way. A lot of times people will come into our meetup and they'll say, hey, I bought a premium theme or I bought a premium plugin and I can't figure out how to use it. To me, it's always good to learn in the free space. And then, hey, if you need to upgrade this plugin to a premium version, that's a good time to do so. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, talk about a couple of products, and then we're going to do a quick look over of a couple of sites in terms of user experience and a couple of questions that I tend to ask on most projects. Right. And I guess the question is, are you hungry? All right. And I'm going to pull up another screen and let me know if you can see it. All right, oops. All right. So one tool I like using is Page Insights. It's always important to find out how fast your pages are loading. Again, search engines promote your information better, or your information is found easier indexed in a favorable way if your page loads fast. So it's always important to keep this in mind. So again, if you're going to be heavy on the images, or a lot of times our designers are always asking for bigger images or more videos on the pages. And I just run one of these and sort of show, hey, people don't really engage with the video. They just look at it for 3 or 4 seconds and they move on. So that real estate is way more important to try to get a call to action to have them click over and buy a pass, or click over and get information on how to ride the shuttle to SoFi Stadium, for example. So we're gonna take a look at 3 sites, because again, it's almost lunchtime, so I'm getting a little hungry, and I'm sort of a foodie. So we're gonna look at, and we're gonna do a build of a Korean barbecue restaurant. So these are 3 places that I've been. This one, the first one, and again, can everyone see the screen? You should, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
This is a Michelin star restaurant in New York that I went to last summer. It's a Korean barbecue place. It's a steakhouse. And as we can take a quick look at it, there's a video immediately. Not many, there's a couple of photos at the bottom. All right, so let's grab this URL and see how fast this page loads. All right, so it ran the report, and on mobile, it failed in a couple of areas. It continues to build. It looks at a couple of other things. It looks at how accessible the site is, as well as how SEO friendly it is. So it's going through and it's diagnosing those problems. Let's go ahead and we're going to run it on a couple more while it's doing that. This one is the first Korean restaurant I went to when I worked at Metro. One of my colleagues, she was Korean, and we would go to Koreatown. And this is, if I have visitors in town or friends, we go here. So I'm going to do the third. So again, if either of these sites or these businesses were your client, this is a great way to pitch your services, because again, we want to build something that's fast. Another thing that's great about making sure that your site is accessible is that if you write your code in a semantic way, your site will load faster, which your site will do better in ranking. So again, the more accessible your site is, the better it will perform. All right. So, all right, let's look at that first test. Again, it shows you in both desktop and mobile form. So it failed in a couple of areas, and you could see in terms of performance. So having a large video and large images on the site is probably that reason. It also shows you some screen caps of what it tested. It breaks down that report more. You can actually copy this link and share it with your client as well, or you can go through it at a later time with your client on a Zoom call, for example. It also talks about accessibility. It gives you the areas that are at issue, and you can go in, look at the code, and fix it based on that. And then it also talks about best practices and SEO. So it ranks pretty good in terms of mobile. It also, you can look at, in terms of desktop, it does a little bit better in terms of performance. It's not as good in terms of accessibility. But again, this gives you ammunition to go back to your client and work on it. And you would think a Michelin star restaurant that charges a lot of money would have the best site experience possible, because they want to keep that clientele coming. So this is a second site, the tofu site, the tofu Korean barbecue. The performance is bad. Let's scroll through that page, and we'll take a look at it in a second. I'll scroll through and show you some things that probably made this report pop red. accessibility, it's pretty good. It has some issues in terms, and again, this is a baseline. I would still suggest using a more in-depth accessibility tool to go through and really dig through the content as you build. And then in terms of the build process, I'm going to talk about that a little later. There are certain steps as a foundation I always recommend you do. So again, start with the basis of accessibility and usability, and then use that as a jumping off point to make your site as efficient as possible in terms of user experience. So again, this is a great way to quickly go in and get an idea of how the site ranks. And then it can also help dictate the direction you want to go in terms of your design. All right. Okay. The second thing that I would do right off the bat, and again, when I'm in my design process, I usually do a speed test. I do a quick accessibility test. And then as I build, and we'll talk about this later, when you pick a theme, do a test. As you build on that theme and build out the design, test along the way. Ideally, do user tests early in the process. A lot of times, we would get a site from an outside vendor at Metro, and they would say, "Oh, we're going to launch the site next week. Can you check it and make sure everything's okay?" That's the worst time to do it. You should never try to retrofit your design, but a lot of times we had to eat it and spend long hours trying to fix things and get them up online. All right. So the second thing I would do in this case is there's a plugin, and I'll share this as in resource links at the end of this doc. I use Accessibility Insights for the web to do something quick. It's browser-based, it's free. It's a Microsoft product with Axe Core, and you could just run a quick fast pass. That's going to quickly go through the site, and it creates a report. It tells you how many instances. In this case, let me plus it up so you can see it. There's 7 failed instances. It talks about the areas. So again, the Page Insights had an accessibility score, and it didn't have as many items. And again, this one looks at a little closer for different things. You can export the results, share it with your client. It actually suggests color fixes that would help in terms of accessibility. It also tells you a couple of other things that you need to do in terms of accessibility. So I usually run these on all the sites as well. So right off the bat, I do those two things to get an idea of the client. Also, I look at Google Analytics, any kind of reports to get any data on how people use the site. One of the good things about being at one place for so long, our Google Analytics were 30 years old. So we saw trends over a long period of time. A lot of time when you deal with the client, they may not have a history that you can go back and look. And that actually sets them up better to say, hey, we really want to do this. It may not be as logical as it should be. But again, getting as much information up front or coming back with that information as you monitor the site can help you impact the design in a positive way. All right. So let's go and build something. All right. I'm gonna spin up a site. There's a number of different ways. You maybe host it. So your process may be a little different. I'm using a WordPress tool that's available on WordPress.com, but it's free to use in your personal environment. So I'm testing it out because our meetup site is on .com. So I'm going to be able to test it out in terms of staying up to date on the latest technology. Some of you may have used Local by Flywheel, but this is a great tool. So far, so good. You can create what's called a blueprint. I think Local has something similar. You can create a JSON file. So if you use certain plugins, certain themes on a consistent basis, you can create a JSON file that you can quickly load, and it'll spin up a site with those plugins or themes already installed. So it saves lots of time. So I'm going to go through now and add a site. And again, can everyone see Site Studio on the screen? So it should say add a site. Yeah?
Yeah, we can see
Oh,
it aside.
good.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to start from a blueprint. I'm sorry. All right. So I'm going to choose a blueprint. You have a number of, if you choose blueprint, they have 3 standard blueprints out of the box. So if you're trying to build an e-commerce site, it has certain plugins already bundled in. It has a development blueprint recipe as well as a quick start. So I went through yesterday and I created a basic blueprint for today's demo. And I'm going to give the site a name. And again, there's also Playground, so you could actually do something similar in Playground with the site to test it locally in your browser. So again, you don't have to have a hosting plan, especially if you're just getting started with WordPress, I would say. And I could share that link later. Just go to, I think it's playground.wordpress.net. Just go there and it'll spin up a site when you go there, and you could test out things and try to build a site that you can actually save and export somewhere later. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. It's loading in WordPress. It's running the blueprint. And I've tried to go through and create a little bit of content that I could use, pull some images in. So I'm going to go through the basics of building a site. And again, it may be, and I'd love to hear in the chat if you're interested. It would be great to maybe do a part 2 with doing this same process with a page builder, or doing this with another block tool. So again, I'm always into trying to stay current by, implementing a lot of these rules and processes or principles in different environments. All right, so it gives you your standard interface. We're going to go ahead and open up WordPress. All right, so again, just those that have been in the WordPress space for a while, one of the things that made WordPress great was a 5-minute install. So this process, as you noticed, it took about 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And if we go in and look, it installed these plugins for me in terms of themes. It installed 2025 for me. And I wanted to talk about a couple of quick things before we build. Again, these are foundations that I always recommend. I love to share the story that when I got into the WordPress space full time, my journey is sort of split down the middle. I had a heart event in 2018, but before that, our agency used WordPress, but not on the main site. It was on our blog site. We created a blog, a news blog, and we brought in a couple of, we brought in a Pulitzer Prize editor from the LA Times. Our staff, Metro was getting banged on a lot in the media for sinkholes, poor management on projects. They were on 60 Minutes. So they decided, hey, let's put out positive news about Metro. Let's do 5 to 7 stories a day. So they were really cranking out information about Metro. And back then, we used, when I first inherited the site, it was a premium theme, which is a no-no. It was also hard-coded, which is another no-no. So I had to learn WordPress fast. But fortunately, we had the budget to send me off to training, and that's where I learned about the WordPress community. So that part of the journey was not really involved in the community. After 2017, that's why I'm here before you today. I decided to do things that I really love creatively. I really love this community. I remembered how people helped me out when I first learned WordPress at that initial training. So I really try to give back in terms of that. So here are some, when I first started back in WordPress, I did a website for my brother. He's a printer. He does print brokerage. He has a print brokerage firm where he does a lot of different types of printing. And I decided to redo a site for him. When I opened up the dashboard, it was the start page for most themes look like this. It has a lot of information, a lot of the tags, the type of theme it was, but he worked with someone overseas, and it was something that was hacked. It was really bad. His site had a lot of bad things in terms of viruses, so we had to gut it. So the first thing that I would recommend to the audience is always start with a theme from the WordPress themes repository. And then especially to double down on it, I would say never, unless you have somebody that you're working with that you trust, you can trust their recommendations, but starting with a theme from the repository, you can do a couple things, and I'm starting to lose my voice here. You can look for themes based on certain features. So for instance, if you wanted to see all the block themes, and again, these are themes that are in line with Gutenberg Full Site Editor. You can also, what I recommend in terms of, there's different types of sites. You can look for accessibility ready sites. And here, let's go. So if you apply that filter, it'll show you all of the themes that are accessible. So one of the things that I always try to do is start with an accessibility ready site. So that's the foundation. Again, I would install the theme, run a quick test, and see how it does in terms of speed and accessibility. But then each phase of the design process, go back and run those tests along the way. So as you can see here, these are a number of different themes, and you see 2025 is in there. So the automatic team, the themes that they make, they always try to meet that guideline. And to get into the repository, you have to meet a number of different criteria. So it's sort of like taking your car to a authorized dealer versus taking it to Ned's Auto Body Shop. You get a certain level of comfort, a certain level of workmanship in terms of guarantees. It may be a little more expensive, but this one, everything in the repository on WordPress.org is free. So again, start with this. Sometimes they'll have a theme that's in the repository, but then they have a premium version. Like for instance, if you work in Elementor, they have Hello, which is a free theme, but then they have some other themes or other features in Elementor Pro that you have to buy in a premium version. I would say this applies to plugins as well. A lot of the plugins that I installed are in the repository. So I start there. And again, I would use a plugin that someone recommends if they're a credible voice. And also I look at certain things in terms of a plugin. And I mentioned Hotjar before. Unfortunately, Hotjar hasn't been updated in the last free versions of WordPress. So I would be nervous about installing that. And again, like I mentioned, there are other products that do what Hotjar does. So part of this journey, this part of my journey since January, is going through and doing that. So quickly look at the version, the number of times it's been downloaded, look at the reviews. All right. So let's get back over into the site. All right. Right, one of the plugins that I installed is called FakerPress. For this demo, I'm going to pull in some content. This plugin generates posts and pages. So let's go ahead and just create 10 posts for the sake of the demo. You can also, there's some theme unit test data that's on the codex on WordPress, but it brings in a lot of stuff that you may not want. So I'm going to go ahead and generate these posts. Then we're going to go, while it's thinking about it, I'm going to add some media files. I went through, and in the slide deck, for the purposes of this demo, I went in and I generated a logo with ChatGPT for this revamp, as well as I grabbed a number of photos from the standard. There's some photo places, and I'm sure everyone, if you want to share in the chat some of the places you can get royalty-free images from. I have 3 that I use for this project. So I'm going to go in and grab some of those. And what I did also, in terms of how page loads happen, I'm well versed in Adobe Cloud as a former graphic designer. So I have batches and processes where I go through and I optimize images. Because again, a lot of times on our news blog, for instance, every now and then we were burning through our limit on our host. They were saying, hey, you're maxing out at you're close to our gigabyte thing, and we have to update your plan. I would have to go in and they were actually uploading raw images to use on the website. So one of the UX tips, make sure you optimize everything. Use tools that can really crunch down the images. One of the battles that we had with our award-winning design studio was they wanted everything 2x, as high quality as possible. And they just didn't understand that everyone was looking at images in 72 DPI on the screen. And of course, they had Mac devices that had high quality images that you were supposed to look at HD movies on. So they would complain about that, but they just didn't get it. Users don't care about that kind of stuff. So I always try to crunch things down and get them as small as possible. So I grabbed a number of images. I'm going to go ahead and open that. All right. So it went through and it added in these posts for me. So again, this will allow you to flesh out your design. It'll allow you to see the page with content on it. I grabbed a few images again to show you to plug into the design as well. So let's go ahead and set things up. This process again, at the beginning, these are things, you'll set up your users under users. So if you have, for example, on the source at Metro, we had over those 20 years that the source was around or source is around, we've had over 100 editors. So it's important to get the people that are going to use the product in the system. So you can add those folks here. And they can, attach themselves to the content that they build. Let's go ahead and do two things. I'm going to create 2 pages for this design to start off with, but actually it's going to be a total of 4, but we'll start with our home page. When you first start, you'll get the editor. Going to quickly create a home page. Once you start in Gutenberg or install for the first time, it's going to pop up this starter screen with a number of different patterns. A pattern is preset modules that someone's built based on the theme that you can quickly choose and use them to start your design. So for example, we're building a landing page. I can select this one. It says landing page for a book, landing page for a podcast. And one thing, and we've talked about Figma in our meetup, is there's a great Figma file that talks about this theme, and it shows you all the different designs that were built for it. So it gives you a number of different ways to start your page. So let's go ahead and just select this one to get started. One thing I'm going to do as well is under templates, there's a number of templates that are associated with this theme. And again, if I'm aiming at entry-level folks. For those that may not know, a template is sort of what gives the page structure and design. I want the page template with no title. So again, home's not going to show when you do that. And let's go ahead and publish that. And the cool thing about using this, you'll notice on the right-hand side, it asks you if you want to upload these images. A lot of times when you choose something in terms of a pattern, you're going to swap out images. So you don't need to upload that stuff, but you do have the option in case you want to. Let's go ahead and publish that. And again, for the sake of this demo, I would add tags and categories and begin grouping things so that you can create queries and stuff to create a more efficient design. But in this case, let's just get something up. All right. So let's go ahead and do another page. Let's do it. Let's go back and do it a different way. All right. All right. And this one's going to be this is going to be our blog page, but this could be our menu page. So we can go through and select. Again, we're using a pre-built, for the sake of this demo, we're going to choose something that's already in place, but if we have time, we can also go from scratch. And again, no title. Okay. And you may be asking, why did I create a homepage and a blog page? For those new to WordPress, it can work 2 ways. When WordPress first came on the scene, it was a blogging platform. So a blog means something like Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky. That's basically a stream of posts that are chronological. But WordPress has grown to over 43% of the web, or 45%, wherever it's at, because you have the ability to create a full-fledged website that has nothing to do with the blog. So I created those 2 pages to create more of a landing page for this business. All right. So now that you created those 2 pages, I'm going to go to reading, and under reading, I'll plus it up so you can see it. I'm going to choose a static page as the home page, and then I'm going to select home as our home page. And if you have a blog, a lot of times, for example, if you're on, I think if you're on the GreenGeeks site, they have a blog that talks about their webinars and things like that. So you can have a page that's just for the blog. All right. Then you have the ability in terms of the blog, you can do an excerpt or a full text. When I'm designing, and this is sort of a red button topic, so don't do as I do on this one. Sometimes when I'm building in a private environment, I'll discourage it from search engines, because if you're on a host, people can still find those pages, but always remember to go back and uncheck that. So I'm going to save those changes. Under settings, these are a lot of the basic things for the site. Under general, it's important to give your site a title as well as a tagline. Again, this is what a search engine will pick up. So I'm going through and adding a couple of items. You can choose a site icon, and the site icon is what you see at the top of the tabs in your browser. So again, it gives you specifications. So I would say create a square graphic that's 512 by 512. I'm going to use the AI generated logo. It may not be as legible as possible, but again, always add your alt text. Again, this is in WordPress. It's right there for you. So make sure you add in alt text, unless the image is just decorative. So I would just go. All right. Then I set that as a site icon. It'll ask you if you want to crop it, and then it shows you a little preview on the right of how it's going to look as a tab or as a button on your mobile device. Right, so that's set. And then you go through here and you can select your time zone. I'm here in Los Angeles. You can select how your date format is going to be. So you have a lot of control over certain things. Let's go ahead and save that. And again, I'm going to sort of speed through a couple of these things. You have the ability to let the product know how you want your URLs to appear, which is pretty awesome. You know, a lot of us, I mean, if you don't do anything out of the box, you may get the 2025/10, you know, all that gook. But again, for SEO purposes, you probably want the basic text for your posts that are turned into the URL itself to be what's indexed. So that helps a little bit. Then let's go back and take a look at the site. So as you can see, this is just from the template from 2025, and you have the ability to go in and tweak this design. One of the things I wanted to show you in terms of UX, the process is what's changing in Gutenberg it sort of mimics what I was used to as a graphic designer. Like I have my old color chip books and all that kind of stuff. We would do layouts, and now you do those layouts in Figma and just hand those off to your developer. But you can actually, it works more like a page builder where you can do a lot of global things and you can change these things, but it's more visual in terms of what you can see here. So I'm going to go to the editor. And now, again, we've set up some basics for the site. Now you can come in and do some of the finesse and design things that we all love to do as designers. So if you open the style book, you'll notice that in the center panel, it has your styles. You can browse the styles that are with this theme. So unfortunately, I should have probably shared on a bigger screen. So these are variations with this theme. So most themes have a number of different design variations. So again, out of the box, you get the basic look and feel of the theme that you see when you choose it. And it's in the thumbnail, but you also have, in this case, it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 variations. So let me see if I could. Nope. All right, so we can click this one, and then it immediately updates your theme to the evening variation. Or you can click this one, and again, each theme has a different pair of fonts, a different series of colors, and we'll take a look So again, this one has a different look and feel. So again, right out of the box, they try to give you a lot of options for look and feel. And you might say, hey, I like that one. And then you could tweak it based on that, or you can create your own combinations as well. So again, let's go ahead and take a look. Once you select, you can choose a style, and you see it selected here. It has a number of different colors associated with that theme, and you can go in and you could tweak those colors, and it would apply globally. So the variation that we chose is going to be applied. Let me just choose Twilight, for example. Then also, you'll also notice that each change you make in the lower left-hand corner, there's a blue button to review the change and apply it. If we don't click that and we go back, it's going to forget about those changes. You can also, there's variations in terms of type. Again, on the style page, it showed you that each variation had fonts tied to it. But here you can actually see what the name of those fonts are. These are 2 fonts that are installed. But say you want to install something, you could do it 2 ways. Like I'm an artist as well as a developer, designer, and I love to draw type. Actually, for our WordCamp, I've drawn a font based on a retro television show that I'm going to install. But you can use fonts that you create or you buy somewhere else. You can upload those, or you can download the fonts from Google Fonts, or you can just simply install them in the traditional format. So again, if you have a font, you can upload it here. But let's go. When the first time you do this, it's going to ask you, hey, do you want to allow access to Google Fonts? We'll say yes. And then you can go through, if you know the fonts that you want. I usually go ahead and look through Google Fonts and determine what fonts I want to use. So in this case, I think I wanted to use a grotesque. And you can go through and select the fonts that you want to use. Again, think of the font pairings and the font weights and styles that you want to use. Again, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to select them all, but you don't want to have 10 styles and 20 styles. That's going to make your site move a little slower. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to go ahead and show you how easy. In the past, you would have to enqueue your fonts and do a lot of different things to get them active. Page builders now have taken care of this as well, but it's good to see that it's a lot easier in the full site editor. All right. So if we go back, now we'll see that the font's here. Then you also have the option to go through the styles for your website. And in terms of the typography, all of your text is currently in man rope. I'm going to switch that over to this one. And you can work through your entire style sheet that way. You can go through and change your headings. Like right now, it's Roboto Slab. Let's leave that. You could say, hey, instead of just light, I want to make it semi-bold. So you can go through, and you noticed on the right, it updated automatically. If you click on the eyeball, it shows you, and this is what reminds me more of like Figma or more design system that shows you all of your fonts and your colors as they're going to appear based on what you've changed as well. So you can preview at it as you go. So I would work through all of this, make those changes, and again, make sure that you update your changes on the left here. But you can go through your backgrounds, your shadows, your colors. And again, this is your palette, and it shows you what you have. You can go in and you could customize it even further from here. So say if you didn't like that color, you could change it something darker. And then let's go ahead and save. It tells you what's going to change here. And then you can visit the site. All right, so let's go in and we're going to modify a couple of parts of this page. How we're getting close to time, but let me know how much further we need to go.
Yeah, we're running out of time. Yeah,
Okay.
we have to also go to.
But that's the basis. Again, you can go through and update the images if you need to. I'll quickly change a couple of things here.
Yeah.
And then we'll take a few questions. You can update the images from the media library. And it updates. So again, it's very simple. So say, for instance, you wanted to edit a global element like the menu. Right. We can go ahead and we can add in a logo. From your media library. And again, the menu in full site editor is a little different. It's very interactive. It's on the page. And from what I hear, I guess mega menus are going to be coming pretty soon. So that's going to be a big change, but it's really intuitive, really simple. And I appreciate it for that tweak. And you can move things around. So again, as you work, it's a live environment like we're all used to in the page builder environment, but it's a quick way for you to go ahead and make those changes. So with that, I'm gonna open it up to questions. Again, I could extend on this. I probably went a little too long with some of the intro information, but again, it shows you that just getting up and running, using some of the basic principles is a very quick way to get a site up and running. Again, if you don't have a lot of experience using the templated items, it's a great way to get started. As you become more adept at doing design, you can start with the blank page and you can build your own design elements and create a design system. Again, based on a lot of what we talked about, you have a lot of control. So I would suggest we do have the control, we do have the ability. Let's go out and do something great. So I'll turn it back over to you, Anna. Sorry, I went over a little bit.
Okay. We have quite a few questions. Let me see what we can get to. Aaron was asking if we could be clear where the tools you are using are available as part of a GreenGeeks account and which are paid plugins and extensions. I believe they're not part of the GreenGeeks account.
Okay.
They're
So
just
yeah, so the browser tools that I showed you are free. So Accessibility Insights is a Google extension. So if you're in Chrome, you just go, and again, the links will be in here. So again, Page Insights, if you have the slide deck, that'll take you to the page so you can download that. Hotjar is a plugin that's free. If you're on the Hotjar, this link will take you to the Hotjar page, and if you wanted to do it through code, you could do it that way, or you can use the plugin that's on the repository. And again, I'm a little leery because they haven't updated it in 3 years. But again, we've used it on Metro for a little longer than 3 years. One thing I didn't talk about is A/B testing, which is a cool concept. And this is a free plugin as well. Like I said, I always start with things that are free and you can learn and get up to speed on those. And again, on top of GreenGeeks, it's fine. These are all free. When you're in WordPress, I mean, your host is where your website lives. It's like it's like the driveway to your house. The color of your house, the type of roof, those are the plugins and themes. So think of it that way. Everything I'm showing you today is free. And again, I have some accessibility tools in here, as well as some ways to get up and running with WordPress.
yeah, and we will include all the links when we send the video recording recap. Okay, moving on here, we have Stephanie saying WCAG 1.1.143 is pretty old. Does this tool cover version 2.2?
And I'm not sure what are you referring to something that was mentioned in Accessibility Insights or one of those tools? I believe I'd have to check, but I think you do have the ability to update the version that it's checking on. So I can get that answer and get it back to Anna, or I'll send it back to her and she can share it with you.
Yeah, fantastic. Is Blueprint, Judy, is Blueprint a part of the GreenGeeks hosting platform?
Well,
Answer.
Well, Site Studio is a .com tool, but if you use Local by Flywheel allows you to do it locally too. It is not part of the GreenGeeks hosting platform. Those are local testing environments that allow you to build locally. And I think both of them, like I think local wants you to push your site up to WP Engine, although I don't know if that's still the case. I'd have to check, but Site Studio is for WordPress.com specifically. So those tools, like I said, I'll have to check and see if WP Engine has opened that up. Local has been around a long time. And actually, next month, we're going to do a meetup on local environment. So I'll have the answer by then. I don't want to, talk about my meetup, but come there and I'll definitely have the answer. And I'll get the answer back to Anna as well.
Yeah. Joao, what is your take on Readability Index? Any tools that you might suggest to use or rules to follow? I provide maintenance to an academic website with a lot of pages focused on academic reading, and we're working on finding a happy medium between advanced and basic topics.
Oh, wow. That's a difficult one because for me, I've just basically used the text editing tool. I can't think of the name. But it has basic suggestions in terms of the reading level. If you're using something, and again, I'm not a super big fan of Yoast because of some of the extra stuff that you have to see in your admin, but some of the SEO tools have suggestions on whether the text that you're writing, it appears at what level of reading or if it's well written for your audience. So I would leverage some of those tools. But again, I would have to find out more because it's always changing. But there are tools out there that will make suggestions, and it's based on a language as well. If you're in a multilingual environment, hopefully there's a tool that meets that as well. So it just depends on what your needs are. There's some basic ones out there, but again, if you're looking for something very specific, I would urge folks to share it in the chat. But I used a couple of Grammarly is what I was trying to think about. They do some basic suggestions. So those are good tools to start. But again, if you're looking for something really specific, I could get more information back to you.
Great. Stephanie is asking, can you recommend a plugin for events that has good accessibility? I'm moving a city website into WordPress and it's something like a community bulletin board.
Okay. Look up Joe Dolson. He's someone that's really incredible and impactful in the WordPress space in terms of accessibility. And I know he has an events plugin. I don't have the name offhand, but just look up Joe Dolson. It's DOL. I'll spell his name here. And if I can find the page while we do the next question, I'll pop it in there for you.
Perfect. Monica is asking, when I ran the page speed insights on my page, it is coming back with multiple issues across the platform with HTTPS not being used. However, the entire site. Any suggestion on what I need to access to correct this issue? I guess she had
Ooh.
Yeah. Sure, Dawson. Thank you. Thank you, Arika.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a tough one. Again, when you look at your site, are you certain that your security certificates are in place? A lot of times you'll see if there's an error message up there. That may be something that you'd have to interact with the Accessibility Insights folks, but my contact information will be up there, but reach out and then we could sort of work through it together. I can get an answer for you.
Yeah, great. Audrey is asking, what are the importance of tags, categories, and queries?
Well, the beauty of WordPress is that you could do something dynamic. A lot of folks think when you're building a site, you're building static pages. The pages that you saw are based in a database. And one of the cool things, or one of the first requests a lot of folks make when they come to our meetup or I work with them is, hey, I need to do a listing. Like for instance, if you're doing an e-commerce site and you have a listing of your products, that's a query. It basically sends a request to the database and it says, hey, give me all the posts. And you could be very specific. You say all the posts with the category of sunflowers. Or it's a way for you to organize your site and serve up the information in a very specific way. So those are sort of the basis of WordPress. And that's what, makes it such a great tool to use, is that if you understand those concepts, you could do almost anything and do things that are pretty advanced.
Great. Roseanne is asking, are block themes more accessible and future-proof than classic themes?
Well, the reason that I did this presentation and part of this journey that I'm on is that Gutenberg full site editor is going to be, I mean, it's what WordPress is doing now. There's still classic themes, but like I described earlier, um, this theme for the source hadn't been updated in 10 years. So you can stick with the classic theme, but it's not going to be supported, or it may not even sync with what's going on with the full site editor and the way that they build pages. So I would say um, Gutenberg full site editor is the direction. But again, it's going to be interesting to see, like, for example, like the page builders are totally not block supported. You know, they're not following along Gutenberg's path. So we'll see where they end up. I mean, maybe that's going to be a fork of WordPress, but I would say you're going to have to move off classic themes. And as I showed you here, you can create your own. You're not really going to need a traditional theme in the future. You're going to be able to use full site editor to build out your themes and transport them in and use them for your projects.
Great. One more question here from Joao. You mentioned that hard coding pages is a big no-no. What would be your suggestion to migrating from a page with a template but hard-coded content that uses a web builder like Avada for a fluid page without web builders? Would there be a good method to follow, or would it be less difficult but more time-consuming to start from the ground up?
Well, I think that's the quandary that you'll find if you use a page builder or something like that. A lot of times in the WordPress space, it's a good thing and a bad thing that it's so open. You can build, you know, the people that are building things, you can build basically whatever you want on top of WordPress. And a lot of times, like, for example, when back in the day when we were looking at page builder, we compared them, like Divi puts a whole different admin over the top of WordPress. And a lot of these page builders do that. And unfortunately, the way they handle content, if you try to migrate that to a traditional a full site editor Gutenberg theme, you're going to have to copy paste or find a tool that'll allow you to migrate it back and convert it. If you have something that uses the classic editor, once you convert it over into full site editor, there's a box that appears atop each piece of content. You just have to convert it over. So it's like a little click. And I'm sure someone's probably written a plugin to automate that. So when you're coming from a page builder, it's much, much more difficult. So I would say that it just depends on how deep you're in and how much, what penchant you have for a lot of work.
Yeah. Great. And then I think other than that, I see Audrey asking if the webinar slides will be included in the email, but she already scanned your QR code.
Yep.
So
And
you got
then
all
I
the
shared that
slides.
same link with you, Anna. So they can get it this way or they can get it from you, either way.
And then Tiffany making a question if there will be another learning session. I think we can arrange that.
Sure. I
Joe?
mean, like I said, and I apologize again, I can never figure out how much jibber jabber I need to do before I get into the demo. But again, I'd be more than happy to come back, and especially I love to do these based on what people want to see. So if you get feedback and get it to Anna, I'm willing to come back and extend this talk in a different direction. You know, like I said, maybe talk about um, Generate Press or Cadence or Elementor and do the same kind of thing, building out a page in another tool. Because in the space,
Yeah.
there's so many people using different tools. So I'm more than willing to talk about it.
Yeah, we always welcome feedback on topics and other things people want to learn. So, hopefully we get more feedbacks. We see here Kelly saying she wants to know more about Cadence. Okay, great. Well, sorry, everyone, we ran out a little bit out of time. And then thank you so much, Joe, for the
Yeah.
presentation.
Thanks for having me.
And then everybody keep looking out for our webinars at greengeeks.com/webinars. And thank you, Erica, for your help
Thank you, Anna.
today with
Thank you, Joe.
the Q&A and with the chat. And we will see everybody soon.
Okay. See you, folks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.